Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. My brother and my wife tried to sedate me into signing my company away. Few more weeks, and everything will be ours. I overheard her whispering to Brandon on the phone one night when she thought I was asleep. So, I let them think it worked. I played along, half-conscious, confused, compliant. I documented everything. Every pill, every forged paper, every whisper behind closed doors. Then I set a trap, buried them in federal court. Yeah, I found out my own brother and my wife were plotting behind my back to steal my company. She was slowly poisoning me, just enough to dull my mind, make me foggy. Meanwhile, Brandon was quietly manipulating business contracts, shuffling numbers, rewriting terms behind the scenes. I spent 4 months gathering evidence, texts, emails, voice memos, bank records. I built a counter-conspiracy so tight it made theirs look like amateur hour. And when it was time, I didn't just confront them. I destroyed them. It's going to be a long story, so you might want to grab a drink or some snacks. Here's what went down. For years ago, I was 30 and living the kind of dream most guys only fantasize about. My solar installation company, Phoenix Power Systems, was pulling in $3.2 million a year across Colorado and Wyoming. We had 42 employees, a full fleet of custom trucks with our branding, and contracts booked solid through 2025. I drove a blacked-out Ram TRX. Lived in a 4,500 square foot house I designed myself, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a deck that looked out at the Rockies. I had good money in the bank, my phone never stopped ringing, and I was my own boss. I started the company at 26, fresh out of trade school with an electrical certification and $10,000 borrowed from my grandfather, God rest him. I busted my butt day and night. Every install, every call, every invoice, I did it myself. My older brother, Brandon, came in 2 years later. I was stretched thin and we needed capital to scale. Brandon had an MBA and he knew the right people. He brought connections and polish. I brought grit, skill, and an unshakable work ethic. At first, it felt like a dream team. I handled the crews and tech side. He handled the business ops and financials. We even joked once that if we weren't brothers, we'd be rivals. Looking back, maybe we already were. Brandon had always been the golden boy. Star quarterback, straight-A student, prom king, you name it. Our parents looked at him like he hung the damn moon. Me? I was the screw-up. The kid who needed a tutor, who took shop class instead of AP calculus. Family dinners usually came with a few jabs about how Brandon was the business mind, while I was just good with tools. Still, we made it work. Until she entered the picture. Scarlett. She was 30, an investment banker at Wells Fargo, and Brandon introduced us during a Broncos playoff game at his place. I remember it clearly, TV blaring, guys shouting, beer cans everywhere. Then Brandon waved me over. Hey, Axel, come meet someone, he said, slapping my shoulder. This is Scarlett. She's way too smart for you, but I figured I'd give you a shot. She laughed. Not a fake, flirty laugh, a real one. Don't listen to him, she said, holding out her hand. Scarlett Sinclair, I've heard a lot about you and your company. Her grip was firm, confident. She was stunning, hazel eyes, dark hair pulled back in a twist, and dressed like she'd just come from closing a 7-figure deal. Only the good stuff, I hope, I said. Depends on who's telling the story, she smiled. But I'm curious. You're the one running Phoenix Power Systems, right? That's me. I nodded. Started it from the ground up. She tilted her head. What's your EBITDA? And what kind of tax structure are you running, S-Corp or LLC? I blinked. Most women's eyes glazed over when I talked business. But not hers. Scarlett took notes. We dated for 18 months before I proposed. I remember standing there with the ring, watching her eyes go wide as she said yes. In that moment, I really thought I'd made it. Beautiful, brilliant fiancé on my arm. Business booming. Even my parents, for once, seemed genuinely proud, maybe even a little impressed. The wedding was perfect. Nothing over the top, but elegant. Exactly how Scarlett wanted it. She'd insisted on a prenup. I've got my own portfolio, Axel. It's not about you. It's just smart business, she had said, her tone cool but reassuring. I respect that, I replied. Honestly, I'd have done the same. Brandon helped draft the agreement. He made sure both sides protected their professional interests. This is how real partners handle things, Brandon told me over a whiskey. Clean, mature, and airtight. You're making the right move. At the time, I believed him. Hell, I thought it was a smart move too. But about 10 months into the marriage, strange things started happening. I'd always been in great shape, disciplined, consistent. Gym 6 days a week. Half marathons on the weekends. 12-hour days on job sites. Nothing. My body was a machine. Then, it started slipping. Fast. I was exhausted all the time. Could barely drag myself out of bed some mornings. My max bench dropped from 315 to 225 in under a month. My hands would shake when I climbed ladders. I'd get winded just walking across the site. Scarlett was concerned. Extremely concerned. "Babe, this isn't normal," she said one night as I sat slumped at the dinner table. "You need to see someone." I already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Levin for Monday. "You don't think it's just stress?" I muttered, rubbing my temples. "It could be, but we're not taking chances. I also found a nutritionist who specializes in male adrenal fatigue. You're going to start working with her too." She dove into research like it was her job, Googling symptoms, printing out articles, buying books. She changed our entire grocery list. She even brought in some weird imported supplements I'd never heard of. Meals became a production. Organic everything. Custom teas. Vitamins in neatly labeled pill organizers. She'd watch me like a hawk at dinner. "You're working too hard, babe," she'd say gently, stroking my hair. "Your body's trying to tell you to slow down. Let us take care of the rest." The us bothered me. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Meanwhile, Brandon had his own project. The business. He started pushing through aggressive changes to our structure. Things I didn't fully understand, but he insisted were best practices. "New liability arrangements, Axel," he explained one day, flipping through pages in my home office. "You have to think ahead. If we ever get sued, you want layers of protection." "Do we need all this now?" I asked, rubbing my forehead. "It feels like a lot, man." "You're not looking at the bigger picture," he said sharply. "Your background's technical. This stuff's corporate. You hired me for a reason, remember?" Every time I questioned something, he hit me with the same crap. Lectures about modern business strategy, case studies, fear-based hypotheticals. Then came the banking changes. A new account setup that required dual signatures on all major expenses. Then, ownership percentage revisions. "Minor," he said, "just tweaks to reflect our evolving roles." Then, a succession clause, buried deep in the paperwork, that would give Brandon full operational control in the event of a medical impairment. I was too damn tired to argue. I was foggy. Couldn't concentrate for more than 20 minutes without needing a nap. Brandon started showing up after dinner with stacks of paperwork. He'd spread the contracts across the kitchen table like it was a war map. "This just needs your signature on page 6, 10, and 12, he'd say casually. Scarlett would appear behind him with a fresh cup of coffee. "Just push through it, babe," she'd say sweetly, rubbing my shoulder. "You can rest after this." It felt like I was drowning, and they were the ones holding me underwater with a smile. Last December, Scarlett went all out on dinner one night. It was a Tuesday, I remember, because I had skipped the gym again, blaming fatigue. "I made something special," she said, placing a steaming plate in front of me. "It's lamb with saffron, turmeric, and this ancient Himalayan spice blend I ordered online. Supposed to help with focus and energy. It tasted slightly bitter. Not bad, just off." "You sure this is edible?" I joked. She laughed. "It's an acquired taste. But hey, it's supposed to reboot your system." I ate all of it. She'd spent 3 hours preparing the damn thing. I wasn't about to hurt her feelings. Around 9 p.m., I got up to go upstairs and grab my laptop charger. As I reached the top of the stairs, I paused. I heard voices from the kitchen. Our house has this weird acoustic quirk, something about the way the walls were built. If someone's talking in the kitchen and you're standing in the upstairs hallway, you can hear everything. Every word. Clear as if you were standing right there with them. That night, it saved my life. I had just reached the top of the stairs, heading toward the bedroom, when I heard Scarlett's voice on speakerphone. I stopped mid-step, instincts telling me something was off. Then I recognized the second voice. Brandon. Something about their tone. It made my stomach turn. It wasn't just casual conversation. It was gleeful. Strategic. "The timing is perfect," Scarlett said, laughing like she'd just scratched off a winning lottery ticket. "He's becoming more compliant every week. The new dosage is working beautifully." I froze. Completely still. Brandon sounded pleased, smug even. "How much longer until we can move to the final phase?" "Maybe 6 more weeks," she replied smoothly. "I need him completely manageable before we present the ownership transfer. He's still asking too many questions about the business changes." I felt my pulse in my throat. My skin went cold. They continued, casually discussing how to keep me cooperative, how to pace out the legal documents so I wouldn't notice the trap until it was too late. They talked about timelines, upcoming meetings, and this part floored me, some shell company Brandon had created. Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions. Same model as Phoenix. Same client base. Same service area. Ready and waiting to absorb everything I'd built the second I was out of the picture. "The best part is how grateful he is for all my help," Scarlett said, practically giggling. He actually thanks me for taking care of his health. Brandon laughed. It's almost too easy. They mentioned a meeting plan for the next day to review legal documents and sync up their next moves. And then they laughed again. Loud, unfiltered. Like a punchline had just landed perfectly. About me. I stood there, in that hallway, for 20 solid minutes. I didn't move. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, fracturing. Really, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. My wife was poisoning me. My brother was stealing my company. And they were both laughing at how stupid I was for letting it happen. I wanted to run downstairs. I wanted to scream. But something told me not to. Instead, I turned, walked calmly back to the bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor until Scarlett came up. She smiled, handed me some tea, kissed me on the forehead. You okay? She asked. Just tired, I mumbled. She nodded sympathetically and told me to get some rest. I acted completely normal. Because now, it wasn't about reacting. It was about outsmarting them. I started planning that night. But first, I needed someone in my corner. Someone I trusted with my life. The next morning, right after Scarlett left for her 6 a.m. yoga class, I grabbed my phone and called the one person I knew would answer no matter what, Troy. We grew up 3 houses apart. Same bus stop. Same football team. He'd been with me through middle school fights, high school heartbreaks, and every dumb or brilliant decision I'd ever made. He picked up on the second ring. Yo, he said, chewing. You know it's not even light out yet, right? You watching Sports Center and eating cereal? I asked. Every damn day since Clinton was president. I exhaled. Troy, I need to tell you something, and I need you to believe every word. All right, he said cautiously, the tone in his voice shifting. Hit me. I overheard Scarlett on the phone with Brandon last night. She's been poisoning me. They're trying to get me to sign the company over. There was a pause. Then, let me guess, he said. Scarlett finally snapped and tried to murder you with organic kale. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Close, I said. Try prescription drugs in my dinner. Dead silence for about 5 seconds. Then Troy said, I'll be at your house in 20. Don't eat anything she cooked. He hung up. True to his word, he showed up in his work truck 20 minutes later, gravel crunching under the tires like a war drum. Troy runs his own plumbing business, built it from nothing like I did, and he looks like he could bench press a refrigerator without breaking a sweat. He walked in like he owned the place, didn't even wait for me to open the door all the way. All right, he said, giving me one look up and down. You look like death warmed over. I feel worse, I muttered. He walked straight into the kitchen, opened the fridge, started inspecting containers like a health inspector with a grudge. When's the last time you ate something that didn't come from your loving wife? I just gave him a look. Yeah, he grunted. That's what I figured. We sat down, and I told him everything, every word I overheard the night before. Scarlett's fake concern, Brandon's smug questions, the mention of the shell company. I laid it all out. Troy didn't say a word while I talked. Just stared at me, arms folded across his chest, eyes sharp. When I finally finished, he leaned back in the chair and let out a long breath. So, your trophy wife and your genius brother have been slowly murdering you to steal your company. I nodded. That's the summary, yeah. He squinted at me. Well, I always said Scarlett was too good-looking to be trustworthy. Hot chicks don't marry electricians unless they want something. I actually chuckled, despite myself. Screw you. Hey, he shrugged. You said it, not me. We didn't waste time. We drove straight to an urgent care clinic in Boulder. I paid cash. I wasn't about to let insurance paperwork tip anyone off, and asked for a full, comprehensive drug screen. While we waited, Troy kept himself entertained by whispering commentary about the other patients in the waiting room. Check out this guy, he whispered, nodding toward an older man hunched over in the corner. Bet he's here because his wife's been poisoning him too. Epidemic, I'm telling you. Shut up, Troy. Roger that. For hours later, we had confirmation. The physician's assistant brought the results into a small private exam room and closed the door. Lorazepam and metoprolol, she said, flipping through the chart. In your bloodstream. Both at concerning levels. I blinked. How concerning? She looked at me seriously. Prolonged exposure could cause cardiac arrhythmia, cognitive impairment, fatigue, and in some cases, fatal heart complications. I thanked her, took the report, and walked out into the waiting room where Troy was pretending to read a 3-year-old issue of Men's Health. Well, he asked. Confirmed. Prescription drugs. In my dinner. Troy shook his head, jaw tight. Sick. Absolutely sick. We got back in the truck. I didn't want to go to the cops. Not yet. Not without enough to nail them both into the ground. So I made another call. Darius. He runs a private security firm, specializes in surveillance, digital forensics, stuff divorce lawyers usually hire when someone suspects cheating or asset theft. I met him a year ago through a commercial client who needed security installed on his solar array. The guy was ex-military intelligence. The kind of man who doesn't speak unless it's important. The kind of man who knows things. I explained everything to him in the parking lot of a Taco Bell, sitting on the tailgate of Troy's truck. When I finished, Darius just nodded once and asked, "How elaborate do you want to get?" "I want to know everything they're planning," I said, "before they know I know." Troy added, "What he means is, we want to go full CIA on these idiots. Cameras, microphones, maybe some drones if you've got them." Darius cracked the faintest smile. "Copy that." Within 6 hours, we were fully outfitted. Darius set us up with professional-grade surveillance gear, micro cameras smaller than a quarter, high-fidelity audio recorders that could pick up conversations through drywall, GPS trackers for both of their vehicles, and a forensic kit to monitor their phones and computers. We waited until Scarlett went to lunch with her banker friends. Then while she was out, Darius, Troy, and I turned my house into a goddamn recording studio. Hidden cameras in the hallway corners, the office, even her walk-in closet, anywhere they might let something slip. Then Darius ran background checks on both of them. Turns out, Scarlett had been fired from her previous banking job for irregularities in client account management. Nothing on her public record, but the internal HR memo told the real story. She wasn't just fired, she was quietly escorted out and blacklisted from the region. Brandon? Worse. He'd been involved in 2 previous business partnerships before joining Phoenix. Both ended badly. Lawsuits, accusations, partners claiming he'd manipulated contracts and financial arrangements. "Your wife's got a pattern of financial manipulation," Darius said, flipping through her employment history on his tablet. "Your brother's been running the same game for years. You're not their first target." I just stared at the screen, my stomach turning. Names, dates, internal HR notes, civil filings that never made it to court. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a career play, for both of them. The hardest part? Acting like nothing had changed. Scarlett would serve dinner like she always did, smiling sweetly, watching my every bite. I had to look her in the eyes and pretend everything was fine. "Thanks, babe. Smells amazing," I'd say, faking enthusiasm while palming food and sliding it into napkins. I'd excuse myself, flush it later, or toss it in a sealed Ziploc into the trash at the office. I dropped 15 pounds in 2 weeks. My clothes were hanging off me, but when she commented, I just shrugged. "Must be all the ladder work lately," I told her. "Been pushing myself harder on job sites." Troy played his part too. Every morning, like clockwork, he showed up at the shop with a greasy brown bag from his favorite deli. "Can't have you starving to death while we're trying to keep you from being poisoned to death," he muttered, handing me a pastrami melt and a Gatorade. Though I gotta say, this is the weirdest diet plan I've ever seen. "Better than kale and crushed pills," I muttered. Meanwhile, Brandon kept pressing. He called 3 times that week, wanting to finalize the corporate restructuring. Same cheerful tone, but I could hear the edge behind it. "Just trying to lock things in before Q2 hits," he said. "You've had more than enough time to review the updates." "Still working through it," I replied. "There are a few things I need clarification on." His voice tensed. "We can't wait forever for you to catch up, little brother. Time is money in this business." That phrase, little brother, hit different now. It wasn't affectionate. It was condescension. Always had been. Every time he said it, he meant you're beneath me. Finally seeing the manipulation behind it felt like waking up from a 20-year coma. The next month was like watching a real-time documentary of my own betrayal. The surveillance footage Darius installed gave us everything. Scarlett had a whole routine. She'd prepped 2 identical plates for dinner, both looking identical, same seared salmon, same wild rice pilaf, same sautéed kale. But only one had crushed pills mixed in. She was surgical with it. Waited until my back was turned. Used a mortar and pestle to grind the pills fine. Sometimes a capsule, sometimes a crushed tablet hidden under a layer of sauce. Then she'd plate the food, smile like nothing happened, and slide it across the table. "Try this," she'd say sweetly. I added turmeric. "It's anti-inflammatory." The woman was methodical. I started digging through every inch of the house. That's when I found her stash. Hidden inside a cardboard box labeled organic cotton tampons in our master bathroom closet. I opened it and froze. 6 prescription bottles. All different names. All different pharmacies. Darius examined them later and whistled low. "These are fake identities. She's been doctor shopping. Paying cash. Smart, no insurance trail." "Jesus," I whispered. "She planned for every angle." "She's been doing this a while," Darius replied grimly. "And she's damn good at it." The audio recordings were just as damning. Daily phone calls between Scarlett and Brandon, talking in code, sometimes not even bothering. "Still foggy," Brandon would ask. "Compliant and drowsy," Scarlett would say. "Perfect for signing paperwork." They had strategies, contingency plans, even jokes. They laughed about how stupid I was. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sport for them. Text message recovery told the rest of the story. The affair, the planning, the financial schemes, it had all started just after our honeymoon. 14 months of strategizing how to dismantle my life one piece at a time. Brandon had incorporated Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions 8 months ago. Darius pulled the filing records. It was practically a carbon copy of Phoenix. Same services, same counties, same SEO keywords in the online registration. And the kicker? He'd already started recruiting my best guys, promising them 20% raises, bonuses, management titles. 3 of my most trusted foremen were planning to walk. But the most devastating blow came from the footage in Scarlett's closet. She wasn't just talking to Brandon anymore. She'd been meeting with someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s, dressed sharp, professional. Darius ran her through facial recognition. Turned out to be a forensic accountant. They weren't just trying to steal my company. They were setting up a narrative where I was the problem. Darius's surveillance revealed the whole game plan. They were developing strategies to challenge our financial records and business valuations, laying the groundwork to claim I'd mismanaged the company and needed to be removed for fiduciary reasons. The poisoning? That was just phase 1. Phase 2. Demonstrate I was cognitively declining, unfit to manage day-to-day operations. Phase 3. Full ownership transfer, justified under the guise of protecting the company from my poor judgment. Scarlett's mysterious consultant, the older woman from the closet camera, turned out to be Brandon's ex-girlfriend from college, a CPA specialized in partnership dissolutions. According to Darius, the 3 of them had been planning this takeover for over 2 years, just waiting for the right mix of opportunity and vulnerability. They'd found both. Or so they thought. That's when I called in Aubrey Walters, my attorney. She's a stone-cold specialist in white-collar crime and partnership fraud. Sharp, aggressive, and relentless when it comes to corporate betrayal. I walked her through everything: recordings, footage, prescriptions, the shell company, the CPA connection. She didn't blink. "We're going federal," she said, tapping her pen against the file folder. "This isn't just poisoning and theft. With Brandon operating across state lines and using shell corporations to launder control, this is federal business fraud. I'm contacting the FBI's Financial Crimes Division immediately." But I didn't just want them arrested. These 2 had spent months, years, tearing apart my body, mind, and business. They wanted to ruin me. I wasn't going to be satisfied with court dates and plea deals. I wanted them to feel it, to lose everything, to know they were outplayed. Aubrey and I devised a plan, a controlled confrontation that would give the feds everything they needed. Audio, video, chain of custody, the works. We scheduled a business meeting at my office where Brandon believed I'd finally be signing over majority ownership. He thought it was his victory lap. But in reality, it was going to be a sting operation. Federal agents would be staged in the next conference room, recording everything. I spent 2 weeks prepping. During that time, I stopped palming food and started eating every meal at the office instead. Told Scarlett I was just slammed with work and needed to stay focused. She didn't argue, probably happy she didn't have to play nursemaid. By the end of the first week, I could feel the change. The brain fog lifted. My heart stopped racing. My strength started to return. I was back in the gym, back on job sites, back to being me. Brandon noticed, and he didn't like it. He started calling daily, sometimes twice, always with urgency. "Hey, we've really got to move forward on the restructuring," he said one afternoon, voice tight. "The new contracts are extremely time-sensitive, Axel. If we don't finalize this, we risk exposure." "Yeah," I said casually. "I'm reviewing everything. Just want to make sure it's all airtight." "Well, of course it is. I had the best legal consultants draft this. You don't want to stall out right now." I shrugged into the phone. "Just being thorough, big brother. You taught me that, remember?" He didn't have an answer for that. Scarlett, on the other hand, doubled down. The dinner doses increased, heavier shakes, longer nights of nausea. I flushed them all, smiled through the pain. Then I started to fight back. Quietly. First, I drafted fake documents, looked completely legit, detailing a fictional plan to sell Phoenix to a national solar chain out of Texas. I left them on my home office desk, just sitting there, half-hidden, like I'd been careless. She found them within hours. I came home to hear her on the phone in the hallway. "He's planning to sell everything," she hissed. "We need to move now. This whole plan could fall apart." I walked in like I hadn't heard a thing. "Everything okay?" I asked, eyebrows raised. "Oh, just work stuff," she said, smiling too hard. "Want me to fix you something? I'll just grab something from the fridge." "Thanks, though." Then I added one more twist. I started dropping hints. Subtle ones. I told Scarlett the doctors had found something concerning in my blood work, something they couldn't quite diagnose yet, but that might affect my cognitive health. She froze mid-step when I told her. "Oh," she asked, feigning concern. "What kind of symptoms?" I shrugged. "Fatigue, memory issues, trouble focusing." You know, stuff you've already noticed. I've got some follow-up scheduled. Her eyes practically lit up. Well, if you ever need help understanding any of the medical documentation, she said gently, I'd be happy to help. Meanwhile, Darius had gone full ghost recon on them. While Scarlett played the doting wife at home and Brandon rehearsed his power play, Darius was running counter-surveillance on both of them, tracking, logging, recording, everything. Turns out Brandon had already started meeting with potential investors for Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions, selling shares, promising assets, even locking in contracts on paper for resources he didn't even legally own yet. He was out there pitching a company built on stolen ground, counting chickens before the coop was even unlocked. Scarlett? She'd been sneakier, consulting with divorce attorneys on the side. Quiet, cautious conversations about protecting her assets in case of unforeseen complications. The implication was clear: if the plan went south, she was jumping ship with whatever she could carry. They were planning backup strategies for their backup strategies. What they didn't realize was, I had backup strategies for their backup strategies for their backup strategies. I wasn't just going to survive this, I was going to bury them in it. The morning of the big meeting, Brandon arrived at my office with the smugness of a man who thought he'd already won. He wore that designer suit I always hated, charcoal gray, tied at the shoulders like he was trying to intimidate the room by flexing through tailored wool. His Rolex caught the morning sun as he shook hands with the two business associates he brought along. Witnesses, technically. They thought they were there to observe a routine partnership restructuring. What they didn't know, the adjacent conference room was wired, and two federal agents were listening to every word. Darius was parked outside in a blacked-out surveillance van, running video feeds and monitoring the backup audio from the building's Wi-Fi network. Aubrey was on standby, connected to us through a secure line in my office, ready to jump in if anything went sideways. I greeted them like nothing was out of the ordinary. Brandon, gentlemen, come on in. He walked in like he owned the place, briefcase in hand, chin up, eyes scanning the room with confidence. Then he got to work. One by one, he pulled out documents and laid them out on the polished oak conference table like he was dealing cards at a private table in Vegas. First came the new ownership agreement, giving him 65% control. Then the updated liability arrangements, which conveniently made me personally responsible for any future debts tied to the business. Then came the real kicker, a succession plan that triggered an automatic transfer of my shares to him if I was ever deemed medically unfit or cognitively impaired. Wonder where he got that idea from. Brandon turned to his witnesses, smiling that fake smile he's been practicing since high school. This is the evolution we've been working toward, he said smoothly. My brother's always been the hands-on technical guy, but as you can see, the business has grown beyond his capacity. This structure positions us for major expansion while protecting everyone's interests. He was flawless, calm, polished, persuasive. His witnesses nodded thoughtfully, flipping through pages, impressed by the vision behind the restructure. Brandon was in his element, playing the part of the visionary leader cleaning up a messy little family business. When he finally finished his performance, he turned to me. Just need your signature here, here, and here, he said, tapping the pages with a Montblanc pen. Everything's ready to move forward. I didn't move. I leaned back in my chair and just looked at him. You know what's funny, Brandon? I asked, voice casual, almost nostalgic. I've been thinking about this meeting for weeks, and I keep coming back to something Dad used to say about you. His smile twitched. What's that supposed to mean? I kept my eyes on him. He said, Brandon's always been good at taking credit for other people's work. The room went quiet. You could feel the tension shift. His two associates looked at each other awkwardly, unsure if this was a joke or a family squabble. Brandon let out a short laugh, but I saw it. His eyes shifted. Calculating. This is just business restructuring, he said, trying to regain control. Nothing personal about it. I stood up slowly and walked to my office safe. The door was open, by design, so everyone could see me clearly. The agents next door were probably wondering what I was doing, but this part wasn't in the script. This part was mine. Business restructuring. I repeated, pulling out a thick, red folder from the safe. I turned and walked back to the table, letting the silence stretch. Is that what you call conspiracy to commit fraud and, well, attempted murder? Then I dropped the folder on the conference table. I flipped the folder open, and the photos spilled across the table like a trap snapping shut. Clear, high-res photos of Scarlett's hidden stash, multiple prescription bottles under false names, hidden in tampon boxes and makeup containers. Then came the transcripts, audio files burned to disk, time-stamped and transcribed. Every word they thought they'd whispered in private now laid bare in black and white. Then the bloodwork reports, showing the systematic poisoning in my system, lorazepam and metoprolol, administered in consistent, escalating doses. Brandon's face went ghost white. His so-called business associates stopped nodding and started slowly backing toward the door. One of them looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet. Brandon's voice cracked hard. "Where did you get this?" I didn't flinch. Just looked him dead in the eye. Turns out, when you try to poison someone, you should probably make sure they're not recording every conversation in their house. I reached back into the folder and pulled more screenshots of his text messages with Scarlett, photos of her doctoring my food, timestamped and tagged by Darius's surveillance. Bank records showing multiple cash payments for off-the-books prescriptions. And the cherry on top, the incorporation documents for Rocky Mountain Solar Solutions. Clear evidence he was duplicating my company behind my back and selling it off piece by piece. "You should be proud, brother," I said, spreading the papers across the conference table. "This is probably the most elaborate theft I've ever seen. Real sophisticated stuff." Brandon lunged forward, reaching to grab one of the documents. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation, but I stepped in front of him fast and firm. "I wouldn't touch those if I were you," I said coldly. "The FBI tends to get cranky about evidence tampering." That's when it happened. The door opened. 3 men in dark suits stepped inside, flashing badges so fast and smooth it felt like a movie. "Mr. Brandon Lane?" one of them asked, already pulling out a pair of cuffs. The look on Brandon's face was pure shock, jaw slack, eyes darting, mouth opening like he had one last pitch left in him. But it didn't matter. His hands were already behind his back before he could speak. His witnesses were frozen, mouths half open, no idea what they'd just walked into. While Brandon was being cuffed in my conference room, other federal agents were hitting our house, his apartment, Scarlett's office. The coordination had been in motion for weeks. Aubrey had helped line everything up. No chance for a warning call. No chance to run. But me? I wasn't done. I wanted to see the other half of this empire fall with my own eyes. So after Brandon was dragged out, Troy and I got in his truck and drove straight to Scarlett's office. We parked in the underground garage, tucked between 2 concrete support pillars, and waited. "You sure you want to do this?" Troy asked, leaning against the hood with his arms crossed. "Watching your ex-wife get arrested might be traumatic." I didn't look at him, just stared at the stairwell. "I think I'll manage." He nodded. "Fair enough. Just don't expect me to catch you if you faint like some Victorian lady." I cracked a small grin. "Shut up, Brandon. Hey, I'm not the backstabbing sibling in this story." Then we saw her. Scarlett. She was walking across the garage, fresh from another overpriced lunch, designer heels clacking confidently on the concrete. She was scrolling her phone, probably checking messages from Brandon, oblivious to the hammer that was about to fall. 2 unmarked cars rolled in from different angles, boxing in her exit. Then the agents stepped out, badges raised, calm and precise. Scarlett froze mid-step. What happened next was art. Her face went through this incredible transformation. First, confusion. Then a flicker of recognition. Then full-blown panic. Finally, desperation, wild-eyed calculation. You could almost see her trying to figure out which lie to start with, which direction to run. She looked around the garage like she was about to bolt. In those heels. It would have been hilarious. Troy leaned toward me. $10 says she tries to run in those ridiculous shoes. That's when she saw me. I was leaning against a concrete pillar, maybe 30 feet away. Calm. Silent. Watching. Her eyes locked with mine, and I saw it. The exact moment she realized how utterly, completely screwed she was. "You," she shrieked, pointing at me like I was the villain here. "You did this. You set me up," Troy muttered under his breath. "Yeah, he set you up by not dying when you poisoned him." What a scumsucker. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Just stood there with my arms crossed, watching her spiral. The federal agents didn't rush. They approached slowly, methodically, letting the scene play out. Scarlett locked onto me like a missile, storming across the garage with all the rage of someone watching her castle collapse brick by brick. "How dare you spy on me?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the concrete. One of the agents stepped forward, calm but firm. "Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. Please stop and put your hands where we can see them." She didn't even glance at him. Her eyes were fixed on me like I was the only person in the world. "You're pathetic," she hissed. "You were never good enough for me anyway. I was doing you a favor by trying to make you more successful." I stayed leaning against the pillar, arms crossed, voice flat. "More successful at dying, you mean?" Troy let out a sharp snort next to me. Damn, that seemed to snap something in her. Her composure shattered like glass. She started screaming, hands flailing, words tumbling over themselves. "I gave you everything. I wasted 3 years of my life on someone beneath me. You think you're smart? You're nothing without Brandon's guidance. Just a blue-collar grunt pretending to be a businessman." Troy stepped forward slightly, hands casually in his pockets, but ready for anything. "Lady, that blue-collar grunt just outsmarted your entire murder conspiracy. Maybe rethink the insults." The agents looked tense, watching Scarlett barrel toward me like she might actually throw a punch. I gave them a small wave. Not yet. I wanted to hear it all. Let her hang herself with her own arrogance. She wasn't done. I gave you everything, she spat. I made you better food than you deserved. I managed your health better than you ever could. I was upgrading your pathetic life. Her hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from rage. You were too stubborn, too controlling. Someone had to help you make better decisions. You needed it. I didn't say a word, just watched. Calm, silent. The look on her face twisted with each second of my silence. Finally, one of the agents stepped forward again. Ma'am, you need to stop talking and comply with our instructions. That was the match on gasoline. Scarlett whipped around, fury in her eyes. Do you know who I am? I'm a senior investment banker. I manage portfolios worth millions. You can't treat me like some common criminal. Troy couldn't help himself. Actually, attempting to murder someone makes you exactly a common criminal. The agent didn't blink. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and federal fraud charges. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. And that's when she snapped. I'm being set up, she screamed, trying to twist away. This is all a misunderstanding. He's lying. He's been manipulating the narrative. I'm innocent. She fought like a wild animal, kicking and squirming as two agents finally pinned her arms and secured the cuffs. This is your fault, she shrieked at me, eyes wild. You're destroying an innocent woman's life because you're too paranoid to trust your own family. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. Just watched. One of the agents opened her designer handbag and started cataloging its contents. Then paused. He reached in and pulled out a small prescription bottle. Then another. Then a third. All with different names. All fake. Prescription bottles with fake names. Her face went dead white the moment the agent held up the pill bottles. These aren't mine, she snapped, voice trembling with panic. Someone must have planted them. I couldn't help it. I actually laughed. Right? I said, raising an eyebrow. Someone planted prescription bottles with your fingerprints in your purse. Makes total sense. The agents didn't even entertain her theatrics. They were already leading her toward the cruiser, one on each arm, as she kept trying to twist her head around and yell back at me. You'll regret this, she screamed. You'll never find anyone better than me. You're nothing without me. Troy didn't miss a beat. Lady, he called out, grinning, he's got a better relationship with his electrician than he had with you. I stayed a few paces behind them, not interfering, just watching. Watching her perfect little world crumble under the weight of her own arrogance. Watching as the agents opened the door and loaded her into the back seat like a bag of trash heading for disposal. Right before they shut the door, she looked directly at me one last time. No more performance. No more fake tears. Just raw, venomous hatred. I should have used more poison, she said, her voice like acid. The door slammed shut. The agent who'd been leading the arrest walked over to me, arms crossed, nodding slowly. That confession she just made, that's going to make prosecution a lot easier. I didn't say anything at first. Just kept watching the police car roll out of the garage and disappear up the ramp. Good, I finally muttered. Troy clapped a hand on my back hard enough to jolt me. Well, he said, that was entertaining. Your ex-wife's got a real flair for the dramatic. Too bad she's also completely insane. We were halfway back to the office when my phone buzzed. Darius. How'd it go? He asked, voice calm as ever. Better than I expected, I said. She basically confessed to attempted murder in front of 6 federal agents. He let out a low whistle. Beautiful. Some people really are their own worst enemies. He wasn't wrong. The preliminary hearings were brutal for both of them. Scarlett's attorney tried to spin some nonsense about her being coerced by Brandon, claimed she was manipulated, vulnerable, pressured. Brandon's lawyer tried a different angle, arguing that the whole thing was just ambitious business restructuring, and any confusion was purely administrative. It didn't matter. Not when prosecutors played the recordings. Not when the texts, emails, and video clips painted a picture of deliberate, premeditated conspiracy. During the proceedings, I filed for divorce. I invoked the fraud clauses in our prenup, clauses she'd insisted on, ironically. Her criminal charges voided any claim to marital assets. She walked in with a plan to steal half and walked out with nothing. As for Brandon, I exercised my right to buy out his shares at the penalty rate. Basically pennies on the dollar. Within 60 days, I owned 100% of Phoenix Power Systems. All contracts, all vehicles, all accounts. Mine. Scarlett lost everything. Her car, her investments, her precious reputation. Brandon lost his stake, his shell company was dissolved, and all those people he'd recruited came crawling back, resumes in hand, pretending they hadn't known what was happening. The federal trial was nothing short of a masterpiece. Aubrey had handed the prosecutors everything on a silver platter. The defense teams had nothing, no leverage, no evidence, just overpriced suits and flailing arguments. But before I could even enjoy watching their carefully constructed lives implode, I had one more thing to deal with. My parents. 3 days after Brandon's arrest, I was at home, finally reviewing some long-overdue business contracts when Darius's security system pinged. Multiple vehicles in the driveway. I pulled up the cameras and saw my dad's Cadillac, my mom's pearl-white Lexus, and a third car I didn't recognize. Then I saw them, my parents, flanked by my Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank, marching up to my front door like they were delivering a sermon. I opened the door before they could knock. My mother didn't say a word. She just brushed past me like she owned the place. The others followed without invitation, settling into my living room like they were staging some kind of family intervention. My father turned to face me, his voice low and grave, the same tone he used when I got caught skipping school in the 8th grade. "We need to talk," he said, serious as a heart attack. It was the voice that used to work when I was 12. My mother started crying the second she sat down, like flipping a switch. It was her signature move. Tears before reason, emotion before truth. "How could you do this to Brandon?" she sobbed, clutching a tissue like it physically hurt her to say the words. "He's your brother, Axel. Family doesn't destroy family over business disagreements." I looked at them, for people I shared blood with, standing in my house, in my living room, demanding that I explain why I wasn't okay with being slowly murdered for profit. Something in me cracked. "Business disagreement," I said, keeping my voice calm, almost cold. "Brandon and Scarlett tried to poison me. They were drugging my food for over a year." My Aunt Susan, clutching her purse like a church hymnal, jumped in immediately with the family's favorite script. "Brandon would never hurt you. You're being paranoid. Vindictive. This isn't about facts, it's about jealousy." I blinked at her. Jealousy? Uncle Frank, Brandon's lifelong hype man, took a different route, playing mediator like he was negotiating a parking ticket. "Look, maybe things got out of hand," he said, voice low, palms raised. "But sending your brother to federal prison? That's not the answer. Family problems should be handled within the family." My dad nodded like this was gospel. "We've already spoken with Brandon's attorney," he said, his voice that familiar, dismissive tone. "If you drop the charges and handle this privately, we can all move forward." I stared at him. I didn't say anything for a solid 10 seconds. "You want me to drop attempted murder charges against the brother who tried to kill me?" My mother's crying kicked into a higher gear. "Stop being so dramatic. Brandon loves you. He tried to steal my company while slowly poisoning me to death," I said, my voice now icy. "There are recordings of him planning it." That could be taken out of context," Susan said, waving a hand like reality was negotiable. "People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated." That's when it really hit me. They could see the crime, the manipulation, the betrayal, and they'd still find a way to blame me. Brandon could have shot me in the chest right there in the living room, and they'd probably complain about the mess on their shoes. My dad straightened his spine and tried to pull the old alpha routine. "You're going to drop these charges and help your brother." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I just walked to the front door, unlocked it, opened it wide, and turned back. "Get out of my house." My mother gasped like I'd slapped her. "We're not leaving until you agree to help Brandon. He's facing 8 years in prison because of your vindictiveness." "No," I said, staring straight at her. "He's facing 8 years because he committed federal crimes. The FBI has evidence of everything. This isn't a family dispute. It's an attempted crime." Frank tried a final Hail Mary. "Think about your mother," he pleaded. "This is tearing her apart. Is your pride really worth tearing the family apart?" I turned and looked directly at my mother, still clutching that tissue like it could protect her from the truth. "Brandon chose to poison me. Scarlett chose to help him. You're choosing to blame me instead of them. Everyone's making their choices here." My dad's face went red, jaw clenched, voice sharp with old resentments. "You always were a selfish, ungrateful kid. We should have known you'd turn on family when things got difficult." That one hit differently, because it wasn't just about now, it was about everything. Every dinner, every comparison, every time they'd made it clear I was the expendable one, the helper, the support beam under Brandon's throne. I met his eyes. "You're absolutely right, Dad," I said, steady as stone. "I'm turning on the family members who try to kill me." Darius chose that moment, perfect timing, honestly, to stroll in through the back door like he lived there. He probably monitored the entire train wreck of a conversation through my home security feed. He was calm as ever, eyes scanning the room with that cool ex-military precision that made people nervous. Troy followed him in, carrying a Subway bag in one hand and a half-empty bottle of Coke in the other. He looked at my relatives like he'd just walked into a funeral he didn't care about attending. "Evening, folks," Darius said smoothly, glancing around at the very uncomfortable audience in my living room. "Nice night to visit family." Troy didn't even wait to sit down before unwrapping his sandwich. "Let me guess," he said through a mouthful. "Family intervention caused someone tried to poison their son, and now somehow he's the problem?" Aunt Susan gave them both a cold, practiced ignore. "Think about Christmas," she said, turning to me like she was pitching a holiday special. "Think about family gatherings. Do you really want to destroy all that over some business problems?" Troy actually choked laughing, had to cough into his sleeve before he could talk. "Business problems?" he said, wheezing. "Lady, that's like calling bank robbery a withdrawal dispute." Darius stepped forward a little, just enough to shift the energy in the room. Suddenly, these four people, who had marched into my house like they owned the deed, started looking small, uncertain, like they'd forgotten for a second whose house they were in. "From what I understand," Darius said casually, "family gatherings are probably a whole lot safer without people who poison each other." My mother turned to me, eyes wide and glassy, playing the final card in her deck. The desperate one. "Choose family, honey," she whispered. "Choose Brandon. Don't let these outsiders turn you against your own blood." Troy, now sitting with his sandwich half gone, didn't even blink. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat but respectful, "with all due respect, your definition of family is seriously messed up. Normal families don't require their kids to almost die just to prove loyalty." My dad squared his shoulders and gave it one last go. The father knows best stare. The disappointed patriarch routine. "If you go through with this prosecution," he said, voice low and warning, "don't expect us to be there for you anymore." Troy raised both eyebrows, slow and dramatic. "Oh no," he said with a theatrical gasp. "He's losing the support of people who think murder is negotiable. However will he cope?" Darius snorted. "Isn't that what got you into this situation in the first place?" "That did it." They left after that, faces twisted, shoulders stiff, not one of them looking back. But my mother paused just before walking out the door. She turned to me with one final performance, eyes heavy with bitterness. "I hope you can live with yourself when your brother is in prison," she said. "This family will never be the same." As they drove away, silence settled like dust. Troy wiped his mouth with a napkin and finally looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time all night. "Serious. Sincere." I sighed. "All right, Troy, just say it." He nodded. "You finally figured it out." "Figured what out?" He leaned forward. "Those folks of yours are seriously screwed up. And they're not your family." "Not really. They never were." I nodded, throat tight. "Well," I said, cracking a half smile, "at least I have you, brother. Unless, of course, you're planning to murder me too." He grinned and tossed his empty wrapper in the trash. "Not you. But I'm definitely down to help bury those idiots. See, Troy's my real brother. Always has been. Now, here's what happened next. Scarlett got 6 years, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and drug trafficking. The trafficking charge stuck because of her multi-state prescription scam. Apparently, under federal law, that counted as interstate commerce. Who knew? Brandon? Brandon got 8 years as the ringleader. The mastermind. The charming golden boy turned criminal defendant. The charges included racketeering, wire fraud, and, most satisfying of all, conspiracy to commit murder. Brandon's previous partnership disputes came back to haunt him hard when prosecutors dug into his history. Turns out, if you've been accused of manipulating contracts and screwing over business partners twice before, the court tends to notice a pattern. The jury definitely did. 7 years' worth of shady deals and failed ventures lined up like dominoes, and Brandon just happened to be at the center of every single one. Both he and Scarlett were handed felony convictions, real career enders. Not the kind you quietly recover from with a new job and a new haircut. I mean the kind that put permanent stains on your name. Scarlett? She can never work in banking again. No firm would even let her interview. Brandon? Lost every license and certification he ever bragged about at family dinners. He's toxic in any corporate setting now, blacklisted and irrelevant. But federal prison? That was just the appetizer. The main course was civil court, and let me tell you, it was 5-star. I went after both of them for everything they had, or thought they had. Actual damages, punitive damages, medical expenses, lost business opportunities, emotional distress, and, of course, attorney fees. Aubrey and her legal team didn't play around. We calculated everything down to the dollar and requested $850,000 in total compensation. And guess what? We got every single cent plus court costs, plus additional penalties. Here's where it got really satisfying. Turns out, Scarlett's parents had co-signed a few of her investment loans. They thought they were helping her break into real estate, maybe funding a little side business. What they were actually doing was underwriting a conspiracy. So when she couldn't pay a dime of the civil judgment from prison, the court came knocking. They lost their vacation house in Aspen and had to drain their retirement accounts to cover her debts. Scarlett scorched more earth than a forest fire. And it didn't stop there. Some of her investment banker friends, the ones who used to swirl martinis at our parties and casually flex about hedge funds, turns out they'd been feeding her insider info for years. Thought it was harmless, just chatter between friends. The SEC didn't agree. 3 of them lost their licenses and jobs in under a month. As for Brandon, his wife, Erica, wasted no time. Filed for divorce while he was still waiting on sentencing. Took the kids, packed up, and moved to her parents' place in Oregon. Can't blame her, he was radioactive. No employer would touch him. The whole solar industry knew the story by then. Hell, it made Bloomberg Businessweek. The Solar Poisoning Conspiracy. That was the title. I couldn't have come up with better PR myself. And I made sure no one forgot it. Trade publications, industry panels, LinkedIn posts, you name it. I put the story everywhere. I even shared a redacted version of the FBI's press release on our website. Clients thanked me for the transparency. Future partners felt reassured. And I slept like a damn baby. Neither of them will ever work in their fields again. 6 months after sentencing, Phoenix Power Systems was running hotter than ever. We had a 6-month wait list for installations. The best part? We landed 4 huge commercial contracts directly because clients read about the case and wanted to support the guy who beat the con artists. The biggest deal? A $2.3 million solar install for a hospital group. That one came with referrals to 3 more facilities. We brought on 12 new installers, expanded into battery storage, and opened a second location in Wyoming. End-of-year revenue hit $4.1 million. Our best year ever. Darius became our permanent security consultant, locks, systems, protocols, employee vetting. No more weak links. No more blind spots. Then came the letters. One from Scarlett. One from Brandon. Both sent from federal prison. Handwritten apologies, begging for help with their appeals. I read each of them once. Then I fed them into the industrial shredder in my office. Troy happened to be there the day Scarlett's letter arrived. He was standing behind me as I opened it, sipping coffee and flipping through a tool catalog like nothing serious was happening. Listen to this, I said, holding up the paper like it was a joke. She says she was manipulated by Brandon. Claims she never really wanted to hurt me. Says she still loves me and hopes we can reconcile after she serves her time. Troy spit his coffee so fast it hit the trash can. Reconcile? What's she gonna do? Promise not to poison you next time? I laughed, shaking my head. That letter was something else. Full of flowery language, excuses, fake regret, twisted self-pity. No accountability. Just long-winded attempts to rewrite history. It was the perfect proof of just how completely delusional she still was. Pure manipulation, even from prison. That was Scarlett's specialty. Brandon's letter? Predictable as hell. Troy was standing next to me when I opened it, sipping from his ever-present coffee mug and reading over my shoulder. Listen to this, I said, handing it over. Troy snorted after reading the first paragraph. He's blaming her for everything? Guy tried to murder you, and he's acting like he was doing you a favor. Exactly. Brandon claimed he'd only gone along with Scarlett's plan to protect me and the business. Said he'd been manipulated, pressured, and ultimately trapped in her schemes. Then he had the audacity to suggest we could rebuild our relationship if I helped him appeal his conviction. The man had zero shame. Their appeals were denied within 6 months. Scarlett argued ineffective counsel and coercion, laughable considering her obsession with micromanaging every detail of their plan. Brandon went with prosecutorial misconduct and claimed there was insufficient evidence. Neither argument stood a chance. The evidence was a tidal wave, and the recorded conversations left no doubt about premeditation. They didn't just fall into this. They engineered it. But the final piece of satisfaction came later. Federal investigators kept digging and found out Brandon had been running similar partnership scams in Nevada and Utah. Same shell company tactics, same manipulation of contracts, same theft from small business owners who trusted him. That added a fresh stack of charges. His sentence was extended to 12 years. No early release, no shortcuts. The golden child would be eating gray trays and breathing institutional air for over a decade. Scarlett didn't fare much better. A forensic audit of her old banking records uncovered years of embezzlement. 3 years, to be exact. She'd been siphoning from client accounts to fund her business ventures. That bombshell added more years to her sentence. Her final term? 8 years, no parole. The violent nature of the poisoning charges ensured that. 2 years after their sentencing, Phoenix Power Systems had become the largest solar installation company in the Rocky Mountain region. We had 87 employees, operations in 4 states, and were closing in on $8 million in annual revenue. Not bad for a blue-collar guy pretending to be a businessman. I bought a new headquarters building downtown, sleek, modern, energy efficient, and upgraded our entire fleet to electric. We launched a profit-sharing program that made our installers some of the best paid in the industry. It changed morale completely. People felt like they were building something with me, not just working for me. My personal life? Night and day. I started dating a mechanical engineer who designs wind turbines. Smart, grounded, and the kind of woman who actually respects what I've built. She doesn't try to manage me, fix me, or manipulate me. She just gets it. We're taking things slow, no rush, no pressure. But she's already more genuine in 6 months than Scarlett was in 3 years. As for the house, after Scarlett's arrest, I gutted the place. New kitchen, new bedroom, new layout. If she ever walked in again, she wouldn't recognize a single room. Every trace of her existence was erased. The only thing that stayed, Darius's security system. That's permanent. My relationship with my parents? That's gone too. Never recovered. They never once asked how I was after everything. But they did visit Brandon in prison. Brought him home-baked cookies, probably. Some family dynamics are just toxic. Doesn't matter how much you try to fix them. But I wasn't the only one who learned from it. The entire solar industry paid attention. Our story became a case study in partnership fraud prevention. I spoke at 3 conferences, standing room only each time, about corporate security, partnership vetting, and the red flags I missed. Then last month, I got a call from the federal prosecutor who handled our case. "You're going to love this," she said. Scarlett's been trying to negotiate a sentence reduction, offering information about other financial crimes she claims to have witnessed. I laughed out loud. Let me guess, she's a martyr now. Something like that. But none of it helped her. Too little, too late. Still, she keeps asking about you. Wants to know if you'd be willing to meet with her. I didn't even hesitate. Tell her I'm busy running the company she tried to steal. Brandon? I haven't heard a word. No letters. No calls. Nothing. Word is he's broken. Prison life stripped the arrogance right off him. The golden child finally ran into a wall he couldn't out-talk or outmaneuver. And every morning, when I pull into the parking lot at our headquarters, I see the Phoenix Power Systems sign rising above the competition. It reminds me of something simple, but powerful. Sometimes, the best revenge is just being better, more successful, more respected, more free. They thought they could drug me into submission and steal everything I'd worked for. Instead, they gave me the motivation to build something bigger and better than they ever could have imagined. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.